All right, this is my shot at creativity. It's as good as it gets. Two things. I made a little puzzle because I firmly believe that if one of these puzzle pieces is missing, your model doesn't hum along as smoothly, and it's going to fall apart and it's not going to be effective. So in the middle of the puzzle, we have improve outcomes for all children. If one of these pieces is missing, then what's going to happen is those outcomes aren't going to be as good as they could be. So briefly, I'm just going to touch on each one of these now, and then throughout the day, what we're going to do is look at what each of these elements, and you can think about them in the context of your school, why they're important, and how schools are pulling them off. So the first piece is research-based core curriculum, and I'm going to today talk mostly about literacy, because that's where the research exists. We're just starting to get the research based on numeracy and mathematics that exists now for literacy, and we don't have a lot of research on written expression. What other more practical drivers do you think of behind this? All the research on reading. Think about your caseloads. Aren't the majority of the kids that you support and work with have reading challenges? Yeah, and that's how it is for us as well. The overwhelming majority of kids who receive entitlements in the states, which are very expensive, are in the area of learning disabilities. And within that area, it's reading. So that's why we've got tons of research about reading. And we know how to teach reading now. Okay, so what this is telling us is that the core curriculum, that curriculum that occurs within your kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade classrooms, has to have some certain parameters, some certain elements in it if it's going to be successful, and it needs to be consistent across all your learning environments. What would happen if Mrs. Smith was providing instruction but really wasn't attending to something like phonics, but Mr. Jones was attending to all the elements of reading that we need to deal with? And these were second grade teachers. Now it comes time to go to the third grade. Do you think there's a prediction of which classroom might have kids who are going to be presented with more reading challenges than the other? Yeah, I think we could safely say that classroom that was devoid of systematic and explicit phonics instruction, the research tells us those kids aren't going to do as well. So now what we have is what we call a curriculum casualty. Have you heard that term? It's a student who appears like they have a reading challenge, but I can't know something I haven't been taught. So the premise here is that if everyone is on an equal playing field, then number one, it's going to reduce the number of kids who rise to the top as being at risk. And number two, those kids who do present at being at risk truly do have some learning challenge that we need to address, as opposed to the fact that they haven't been provided with appropriate instruction. So that's the first piece. We're going to look at that in more detail in terms of what are those elements. We're going to universal screening. How many people have children? All right, most of us, right? What do you do the first year of your child's life? Where do you spend a good chunk of your time? The pediatricians, right? You got to go this side. You get there and they set up the next 3 days. What are they doing? They're screening, they're checking, they're scoping things out. They want to make sure they have that little chart, right? You come home and you're proud because your kid's a 98th percentile in growth. You're going to be a football player. Or you got all this stuff. The medical field's been doing it for years. So we're going to look today at some of the research that shows us that there are some skills, in the absence of those skills, are highly predictive of that you're going to have difficulty becoming a competent reader. So we can screen for those skills in kindergarten and first grade, and then do what? Intervention. Then. We already agreed early on that kids who picked up at kindergarten and first grade were going to be more successful than our kids who were picked up as fourth graders. So universal screening, that means everybody gets screened. Progress monitoring. So when we do our screening, we're going to identify kids who are going to be, in quotations, at risk, because they didn't meet a particular benchmark or score or whatever that we said is important. So when we do our intervention, what's your first name?
Linda.
That Linda said, we're doing an intervention when we do this screening. Once Linda has done that intervention, is she going to do it for 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 20 weeks, and then release the kid? If you do, we don't know if it made a difference. What we're going to do is we're going to do it for a couple of weeks, and we're going to do some assessment, some quick assessment. Is it making a difference? Depending on the data, we're going to do it for a couple more weeks. Going to do another quick assessment. So we're going to monitor the students' progress over that who are getting these interventions so that we can alter our behavior if we need to. If we have a youngster who isn't making gains in an intervention after 4 weeks, we got to do something different. And I just throw 4 weeks out randomly. You might decide after 2 weeks this isn't cutting it. So we got to have to do something differently. The way we do that is through our progress monitoring.